All right, and we're live. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Romwe.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good, good. How are you? You excited for the first episode?
Yeah, I am. We chat a lot, so something that you and I do frequently. We like to talk about different things, but this is a little different to bring in the rest of the
Yeah, yeah. Bringing in the rest of the community here, just letting you guys, kind of listen in on what we talk about. It's gonna be pretty much what we talk about normally. We're just gonna have, as you can see, we have a list of things that we're gonna be going over, a list of things we're gonna be talking about. And, hopefully at the end of it all, we can walk away from it a little bit happier, a little more informed, or at least as to informed about what our opinions are. And I love listening to podcasts, so I figured why not give one a go for Age of Empires? It'll be if you're just hearing about this now, which is probably the case. This is our first episode, so I wouldn't expect you to know much about it. We're gonna be keeping it primarily geared around Age of Empires 1. There'll be a little bit of stuff mixed in here and there about other things, but for the most part, it's going to be Age 1. It's not going to be exclusively Classic Cup, which you might expect from this channel. We're not going to be doing just Classic Cup discussions. It's going to be, I mean, it'll be relevant to talk about the Classic Cup a lot of the time, but it's not quite the case of Classic Cup all the time because, it's not all of Age 1, even though it is a lot of what we do on this channel. So, that being said, welcome to the show, and let's get this party started. So Bromley here, he just went on a trip, right? Went somewhere.
I did indeed. Had a fabulous time.
Yeah. So some people might be thinking that you missed out on some of the recent casting experiences, right? The past couple weekends, you've kind of been off the radar, and we have some people who don't even know who you are. Someone asked last night on the stream, who's that? Who are you talking to? I was like, oh man, how far we've come. But
Well, that's actually a good sign because I've been co-casting with you now for such a long time that most of the people recognize, as your alter ego on the casting. So the fact that some people are asking who I am is a good sign because it says you've had, new people join the community just in the last couple of weeks.
oh, that's true. That's true. But Germany. You went to Germany, which is awesome.
I did. The genesis for the idea was some friends of mine. In fact, one of them is two dogs, and then his brother. His brother had actually set up this trip. It's the 75th anniversary this year of the Battle of the Bulge, and he's an avid war historian, World War II in particular. He's a Marine for a decade and a half. So he actually was the inspiration for going on the trip, and Two Dogs and I went along with him. And what a fabulous experience. I've never been to mainland Europe before. I've been to the UK a couple of times. Um, my father speaks German. In fact, he was stationed in Germany for a few years back in the 1950s, and then he taught German in high school. So I've been trying to learn it myself for a couple of years. So it was an opportunity to embarrass myself live in front of some Germans over there.
Yeah, it's funny.
Uh,
I like how you
but
phrase that. It's not you're not practicing German. You're embarrassing yourself with your German. That's funny.
Yes, exactly, exactly. In the big cities, we landed in Dusseldorf and went to Aachen, and then some small towns. In the big towns, English is prevalent. It's easy. Some of the smaller towns, we depended on my linguistic. I use the term loosely skills to get us by places.
Yeah, it's funny.
But just real quickly, a couple of highlights. I have to say, it is the most gorgeous country. The countryside there was just fabulous. The trees, the rolling hillsides, the farms, the cities, the towns, just incredibly clean, beautiful. Weather was fabulous. It was in the low to mid 50s. It's just absolutely gorgeous. The German culture, the food, the people, it just was such a wonderful experience. And, it's probably a lot of the community are as well. History, a amateur historian buff, and being able to see some of the museums and sites associated with World War II, Battle of the Bulge was fabulous.
Oh, that sounds like quite the experience. I'm glad you had fun with that. You
Yeah,
had fun with that.
and I have to say, it ended with me at the Dusseldorf airport in the hotel the night before listening to my very favorite Wiffle casting one of the matches, and boy, was it it was fun to watch. I missed being a part of the co-casting, but it was really fun to watch as a spectator.
Ooh, that's a nice. I was gonna say segue, but that's we're not going there just yet. Yeah, awesome, awesome. Germany. I've never personally been to Germany. I've been to the Netherlands, been to France, not been Germany. Interesting. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Glad to. I that's all. I hadn't heard all that stuff though. The Battle of the Bulge like memorial. I didn't realize, which is cool because a lot of what we want to talk about on this podcast is going to be related to kind of strategy and history and how you can talk about age and still get and maybe in a way get better at age by talking and thinking about it in depth and I just can't wait to like get into this. I don't know. I'm just so excited. But first we can talk about I think the signups for the Classic Cups. I thought that would be interesting because we have new faces there. Um, this is gonna be currently this is on track to be by far the biggest tournament in the Classic Cup so far, and we got a lot of notable names in the signups. I mean, some new ones, and I was just gonna go down the list, not naming everybody, but just going down and kind of picking apart if you want to listen in and hear what we got to say here. Black Bolt is apparently he's a solid player from Voobly. I haven't really heard of him, but he is playing in a show match this weekend on this channel, and I can't wait to see him play. And that might give us a good indication as to where he's at. Iron Steel vouched for him skill wise, so I'm hoping that it's a kind of an expert that I haven't really seen or heard about, and man, could that be exciting? Hmm. Well, more excited. Bisu, man. It's been a while since I've seen Bisu around. What do you think about that, Rom?
Well, it's interesting. I was perusing this list just before this call here because I like to check and see how many. I think I counted 34. I might have missed one. It's like 34, 35.
Hmm.
But the thing that struck me about this list is, and as you go through it, there's a lot of returning players that have been in the other tournaments, been part of the community. Then there have been people who were part of the community and but went away and now back. Bisu is a perfect example. He was back in the beta, uh, very strong player back then, and it's great to see him coming back. Then we have people that are brand new to the DE community that have come from the Boobly community. Like Hillberry's is here, and I think Goldie maybe wanted to sign up but couldn't because he's busy or stuff. But we have people like that coming in. We have new people I don't know at all. Maybe some new age two players or professionals. The breadth and variety of the people who signed up on this one, I think, is unique.
Hmm. I couldn't agree more. And we're seeing some new up and coming names, right? Like we're seeing Hot Chins signing up for this tournament. And, after his breakout show match where he kind of showed everyone that, he's not to be trifled with, taking down Sissoko, solid player all around now. And it's just exciting to see. And we have, community favorites, infamous players. We have the Vietnamese scene showing up decently so far. Most of TLC signing up. We're missing out on Zheng Ni this time around, but we still have Aktu, Tokyo, and Mbe. So still a strong showing from that Vietnamese team. And oh man, I'm just so excited. And we have recurring players. We have at this point now that we're in the fifth tournament, we can look at how many players have signed up for every one. And the list is growing, right? Well, not growing. It's shrinking, but the list of it's just impressive to me how many players have signed up for every single tournament and are sticking around and I think that was initially the goal, right? Is it would be the same group of players kind of competing over it, but seeing all this growth has just been absolutely fantastic, right? We got Dr. Mario showing up now, right? He's been a long time top tier player, and seeing him sign up for this tournament is just really exciting. Looking forward to what he sees because I feel he'll be very strong on this setting, and seeing him compete here, like it's just so many good names, right? And I'm just so excited to see how this plays out because this is gonna be somewhat reminiscent of Assyria and Ashes, where we saw so many players, right? So many players just with getting knocked out in the qualifiers even. I mean, we'll see experts, people you might we could see potential favorites to win getting knocked out in the qualifiers, right? And that's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to the most.
Well, and two, I'm sure a lot of people are given the list, how dynamic the list is. And there's a variety of skills. There's some, relatively new players, some very, very seasoned players, some, expert talent coming in. I'm really excited about seeing the brackets when they come out, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody's going to look at this and say, okay, how is this going to play out? What do the quals look like? And then, people can start thinking, kind of placing their bets, picking who they think is going to win the tournament, how it's going to flow through the brackets. So I guess maybe a question to you is when is the brackets going to, so Monday's the close of signups.
Hmm.
When do you expect to have the brackets out?
Brackets are out Tuesday because that's when qualifiers start. So I'm gonna close the brackets by the because the signups are coming in and it's pretty easy. I'd say to make the brackets all around. Like it's kind of a more intense process. Right, I have a committee, a non-disclosed committee of people I talk to about making the brackets the most fair and engaging for everybody, but at the same time, what you'd want from a tournament, right? Because a bracket is supposed to, in theory, have the best player be seed one and the worst player seed the final seed, right? So getting that as close to reality as possible. Obviously, I can't do that alone, so I have a group of people I talk to regarding this. So we can expect to see. I think we'll have very fair brackets. There could be a couple mismatches here and there, but that's bound to happen, right? Upsets occur. People do better on some days. People do worse on other days. Oh man, ACCM being in this tournament is fantastic. He's one of those age two players. He's basically on the level of Tato in AOC, and not quite. I wouldn't want to say, but he's also Vietnamese, so I would assume, based on how their culture played out with H1, I would assume he has quite a bit of history. Playing in those gaming cafes and playing H1, growing up similar to myself, and I think that's just so exciting to see these big names sign up, man. I just keep scrolling through it. And if you guys don't know where we're looking at the Discord for the Classic Cup. The signups are visible to all, so if you want to go take a look and kind of see what's going on there, feel free.
Well, I'm curious to see if ACCM exhibits the same characteristics that Tato did. I mean, one of the reasons I enjoyed watching Tato so much, whether he won or lost, he got knocked out early in some of the earlier matches, and he went further in the later tournaments. But because they're not almost exclusively DE, I mean, they only come into DE occasionally. They have some very creative, unorthodox tactics and strategies sometimes, and that's really interesting to see.
mhm.
So I'm curious to see whether that's a Tato unique thing, or whether that's people that play a lot of other games just don't exhibit the same sort of build order and tactics and strategies that our DE community do.
Oh man, that's almost a perfect segue, Romley. That is as good as I think I could ask of for leading into our next question, right? Is Age of Empires a good spectating sport? And you just listed, I think, a big pro for that, right? Like a big yes, right? When you said watching someone from a different gaming community come in and do something creative, and we all were just kind of like, what? And then whoa, and I think that combination of what and then whoa is something that you wouldn't expect from such an old game, right? A game that's this old, you would never really anticipate to have kind of those the light bulb moments, right? Like I remember something very specific in Duel in the Desert, watching how Tato reacted to the Scout Rush was something I didn't really realize beforehand, like that you could do that would work so well. And like what he would what I'm specifically referring to was when he would put all of his eco around one storage pit, right? As soon as Tool Age hit, he would just put all of his eco at one storage pit. And this worked primarily because he was Sumerian, right? Or all players were, but with that extra HP. And if an enemy unit, those early enemy units came into his base, he would rally all the vills and just fight them one at a time, right? And with all the vills together, the combined power was it would overwhelm early unit rushes, right? So it would force the opponent to, if they engaged that, lose some units at little with little to no benefit or gain for the rusher, right? That would force his opponents to take their time to build up an army, and in that time he would also build up his own army, and it was just a really interesting way of approaching a problem that Oasis presented, right? Oasis presented the issue of unwallable map, right? And you need to rush, and scouts were just so powerful, and it was just so interesting to see how players reacted to that. And I think ultimately Tato had one of the most creative ways, and I certainly learned a lot from that. And just the idea that you group all your eco on one little spot in one little corner, and it's as good as a wall early, right? Like an Axer gets in there, and you have 15, 16 vills with proper micro. You could not lose any and deal with quite a few Axers, at least with the Sumerian HP.
Yeah, and and I think if you step back from that for a second, going back to the root question, is age a good spectating sport? Um, Clearly, you have a lot of people like watching the matches and everything else. I think the question is really, why is it a good spectating sport? And I think it's because there's an element of randomness to it because you get random maps, you get random civs, you get different teams. There's also an element of consistency to it in the sense that you know what to expect because it's the same game, it's been around, etc. Um, but what I find is even during because it's such a fast-paced game with the combat and engagement, but even in the slow parts, if the early part of the game, you're going to say, okay, well, what kind of maps did everybody get? Where are they located? Who is the pocket? Who are the flanks? If it's a team game, if it's a one-on-one, did they get the shore fish? Did they get a good map? Um, you know, are they going to strategically use their go backs? There's just so many different facets that come into play that you can watch game after game after game, and they're unique. They're just um, and they're exciting. So, yeah, and I had mentioned this to you when I was, after I'd got back, I'd sat in that hotel and I watched for a couple of hours, and I was like, a lot of the games that I watch, I'm co-casting with you, or I'm chatting, and there I was just sitting there, just watching it on my laptop, and I was like, man, this is just a blast watching this game. It really is a lot of fun to watch, especially when you get quality matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that might be, if there was any con to Age of Empires 1 at this moment, it would be that getting a quality matchup is rather difficult given the relatively small player pool. That being said, I think the player pool has been growing rather, I don't want to say rapidly, but significantly. There's been significant growth over the past couple of months, which has really breathed, I think, a new level of vitality into the community and brought just this great energy, which has made watching games a lot more interesting and playing in them a lot more fun as well, because you see both the newer players who tend to be, not always, but can be, right, can be more skilled, like technically, right, but they don't have the same experience, and they, like, kind of like you said with the Tata thing, right, everyone comes into this and brings something new, and that's just what's so fun about watching a game like this, is where when you watch a game of Age, kind of like you said, I think I'm just gonna agree with you mostly. It's just like when you watch Age of Empires, it's like there's the levels of expectations that you can make, and then sometimes they're met, and you say, "Oh, cool! I predicted something would happen, and I was right. I feel good because that indicates game knowledge." And the reason that indicates game knowledge is if you predict something while you're watching it and you get it wrong, it's just, I think that's what's so cool about this game, is that you can be right or wrong while watching it, thinking about it actively, and that's just, as because to me that makes it, as a viewer, you could be engaged with it while not even playing, which is not always the case with certain games and sports, right? And the fact that it can be so engaging, I don't know. It's just, it's hard to phrase that part, but like, you know what I mean? Watching someone play it, or playing it or watching as a spectator viewpoint, like it all just, I don't know.
Well, it reminds me of something Iron Steel said to you and me on a call one time. He says, Winston, I think I like watching the game more than playing it now. It
Mhm.
just it's so dynamic. But as you were talking about the new players coming in and everything, it reminds me of a quote that you and I heard on the Winston and I watched a video recently by a Harvard professor on kind of what's going on in Hong Kong and everything else. Anyway, there's a quote in it that was interesting. He said, nothing breeds success like success, right? And you can see that here in the evolution of this community and the Classic Cup and the number of players that are coming in. The more successful it is, the more exciting it is, the more the level of play goes up, the more people want to watch it, the more people want to participate in it.
Hmm.
And you know, it's not just simply an entertainment vehicle for a lot of the people that watch. They're active players, and they're looking for ways to improve their own gameplay by seeing what some of these experts do. And I think, you and I played since the very first days of the beta. And, it's kind of funny. We found each other early on in the beta and we've been friends ever since. Um, but the level of play here that you see today versus where it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, I mean, it's just been a steady increase.
Yeah, honestly, and I couldn't agree more. Like the level of play has gone up so significantly, and I don't want to, because a lot of people know that the Classic Cup was my creation, but like I feel like a lot of that could be related to the fact that the Classic Cup has existed and there's a way to watch good players, because something a lot of people have probably noticed about this game is there's no replay functionality. You can't load up a game that other people played and watched it on your own time. There's no way to jump into and watch a game that's already running. There are a lot of ways that other games would permit a player to learn, but because it's so difficult to watch a high level game, because it's impossible to like find like how do you, if you wanted to go on right now and watch a high level game, what methods do you have available to you? And I mean that's rhetorical because there are none, right? Currently the only way to do so is to find tournaments, right? There's the Vietnamese community, I think, which does a great job of highlighting expert play for them, right? They have a big community. It's good to watch, but ultimately they're playing Rise of Rome, not Definitive Edition. So it kind of has this like inverse effect where people, I think, who come from that scene and watch a lot of that scene get maybe the wrong ideas about how to succeed in this game. So I think it's good spectating sport indeed, but there are a couple things that could be done, I think, to make it far more accessible. And once those are met, the enjoyment that we all get from spectating, I think, could be like elevated, right? Because, if you could just hop in one day and you could see a list of all the games that have been played today, right? And you see, oh, Memo and Iron Steel played a game against each other. That's worth watching. It could have happened 5 hours ago, it could have happened 5 weeks ago, and it didn't matter. Then man, everyone would want to just watch that on their own time, spectate, study it, learn from it. But because that's not an option, I don't know. I feel like that kind of takes away from the game in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that watching things like tournaments and scheduled matches, um, you get so much more viewership because people can plan around it. They can plan to show up. They know who the players are, so it's going to be a good match.
Hmm.
They know when it's going to occur and all that sort of stuff. Plus, I think there's an element of, even though it's a combat game, there's always a winner and a loser. There's no ties. No, I shouldn't say there's no ties. We have had games with the ties where all the resources are gone and nobody can do anything. But
Right. Yeah.
but when you have a tournament, it's like, okay, you got single elimination, and somebody is going to, is going to progress, and somebody isn't. It's just one additional factor that makes it a little more exciting, especially when people know the players and they're like, "This is my favorite" or not, or whatever.
Oh yeah, totally. Like I mean, I think tournaments are exciting in almost everything that can be slightly competitive. A tournament makes it just so much more competitive. And I think at the end of the day, right, anything that's competitive is fun to watch in some ways. But I think just the level of skill, I think one of the best things about watching Age is just the skill ceiling. That's a term. If you're not familiar, a skill ceiling just refers to, you know, the at what point can humans cap out on how good they are at something, right? And there are some things which are very binary, right? It's like you're either good at something or bad at something, and that's the end of it, right? Age of Empires isn't like that, right? Age of Empires isn't like I don't know, holding line, like I don't know, like there's just like things that are, you do them or you don't, and that's the end of it, right? Age of Empires has so many nuances and skills. Like the skill ceiling is very high, is what I would say, right? And when a game has a very high skill ceiling, watching people who are just way better than I'll ever be is something that you just can't even begin to describe. How there's like a feeling of exhilaration almost when you watch someone who's really good at something that, and you understand the effort that it takes and the skill and all of that, right? So a game that's so easily accessible like Age of Empires, right? Everyone can load in, make villagers, and die to an axe rush just like me. But to pull off like a good bronze and a good boom and a good skill and hitting Iron Age well, that's all something that's it's very visceral feeling, and it's not something that can be taken away. So having that sort of, having something with that essence of, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it's just, when you watch someone do something that's hard to do, it's just always enjoyable. And Age of Empires is very difficult, I would say.
Yeah,
Very difficult.
when these games unfold and we're watching two experts play, it seems like there's at least four, probably more dimensions that you look at. But these good players, it's like you can, even though we see the whole map and we know that, but we know they only have a part of it. But as they develop situational awareness of their map, is it wallable? Is it not wallable? Do I have hunt available versus shorefish? These etc.
Hmm.
um, Knowledge of your civ. What are the unique characteristics? Am I going to take advantage of them, etc. And then you overlay that on top of it. Okay, I know my civ. I know my opponent's civ. I know my map. Enough of it. I'm going to come up with a strategy. I'm going to rush or not. Your tactics and your strategy come into play. And this is where you see the really truly great players are good in all of those dimensions.
Right.
They play their civ appropriately. They'll leverage the map characteristics appropriately. They'll have an overall strategy that may change as the dynamics change, and then they'll have these tactics, where specific movements and everything, either in dancing with the combat units, whether they decide to take an engagement, not take an engagement, all of that going on at the same time, while you've got your eco in the back that you've got to continue to maintain, pump out bills, make sure they're doing stuff. I think that's, to me, what's exciting is all of those elements that, if you play the game, you understand how difficult it could be against a quality opponent to juggle all those different factors at the same time.
Oh man, and you just listed like a dozen things about Age of Empires that are difficult, and just one stuck into my head is like dancing units, right? Like just a micro army control in a situation is just such a difficult thing to do, right? It in and of itself is absurdly challenging, right? To get the perfect angle on your chariot while it's running, right? That's something that just takes experience, trial and error. You could run it 100 times and never get it right, right? Just getting the perfect angle on your chariots. And there's something that's rather instinctual, right? It's like catching a ball, right? It's like, oh, if I run it this way, there's the timing of the arrows and the got to dodge them all, right? And that's just one aspect of the game which players can hone a skill at. And you see the top players in this game, and some just get it like that, and some you can tell that they're just so mechanically resilient and sound that for them, dancing a chariot around all their opponent's chariots and the shots are just whiffing. And oh man, it's just a thing of beauty when you watch that live. And that's just why watching two good players match up, I think it's just such a fantastic experience, man. Ah,
Indeed.
so what would you say? Is Age of Empires a good spectating sport? Yes or no?
Yeah, well, it's obvious for us. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
there every
I
day.
think
So,
it's pretty obvious. We're both gonna just say yes to that, aren't we? Oh
yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly.
Obviously, I think yes, right? Because if I didn't think yes, I wouldn't run the Classic
Yeah,
Cup.
we wouldn't have much to talk about.
We wouldn't have much to talk about. Oh boy, that makes that. That's almost sad. Anyway, it's great. It's happy though because it is a good spectating experience. It's fun to watch, and I think we can agree there's some great reasons as to why. But now, you wanna do some quick fire? Quick fire. This is a little different, guys. This is something to kind of break up the the longer sentences, I guess. Quick fire round. So what this is, it's a little game that Romley tuned me into the other day, and quick fire is when one person. It's essentially like a game where Rom's gonna say a list of things, and between each item, I'm gonna react with one word, right? And then it'll ideally spark some sort of discussion, and then we'll reverse it, right? So, Rom, you wanna give it a whirl?
Yeah, we'll start off. You can use one or two words, but the idea is that you get your initial reaction to it, and then we'll cycle back, and then we'll peel the onion back as to why that popped in your head. All right, so you ready? I'm gonna hit you with five things. We're gonna do one at a time.
Okay, one at a time. I'm ready.
First one, size.
Underwhelming,
Okay. Uh, Number two, clans.
missing.
Number three,
Oh, man.
Elo.
Remarkably irrelevant.
Number four, lions.
Incredible.
And number five, priests.
Overpowered.
Okay, all
All right,
right.
all right, yeah. Let's talk about those. So, what was the first one there?
First one was size. You said underwhelming.
Underwhelming. Yeah. Okay. Why? Obviously. Both. So I'm taking that from the perspective of definitive edition, right? And on DE scythes for two things, scythes were ruined, right? Aesthetically, scythe chariots were absurdly good looking. They had this beautiful white contrast, like they had like the brilliant white on the shields and on the horse armor, and then it would contrast really well with like a punchy, bold color that the player was. So it didn't matter what color you picked, scythe chariots were just gorgeous, and they stood out, and they had this like fear, and they were terrifying. And on top of that, they nerfed the gameplay as well, so that like the power of the unit has gone down in definitive edition because the radius of their damage or their area effect went down. So the issue is twofold. I mean, they're still strong situationally. I still think, funnily enough, they're the best unit to counter legions in the game, which is kind of funny, but at the same time makes some sort of sense. I don't know. Yeah, sorry, that was just the scythe one. What was next?
Uh, yeah, just a couple of comments. I was
Oh,
wondering
right.
what you were going to say on that because that one as well. That's kind of the reason I asked the question, and you ended up hitting it because 20 years ago, sides were one of the dominant units. If you had a side sieve, and the fact that you didn't need gold, the fact that they had such significant splash damage, I mean, they were a real go-to unit. But now they're yeah, underwhelming is actually kind of a good word. I mean, they still have their role. They're great for raiding against vills, but combat-wise, they don't have the same punch they used to. Okay, the
Mhm.
the uh, the second one was clans, and you said missing.
Yeah, they just took away. Well, that's twofold. A, there aren't enough. I feel like more players should be forming clans or teams that frequently play with each other to fight up against each other. Um, and also missing because in the current iteration, on the current patch, clans aren't showing up like in game. So it's like being in one, you don't get that in game flair that makes it all worth it. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I miss our tags, man. I mean,
Yeah, the
our
clan
jerseys.
tags.
We had we put some thought into that. Originally, we came up with I came up with HTL, and you said that's Hiddle. Hiddle. No, Hiddle's not going to work. I had to delete the whole clan. Had to rename it
I'm
to
that's
assuage what's in here, and we came up with HSTL, right? HSTL in Hostile. And now we don't get our jerseys,
That's
It's
so
a bummer.
funny because that's so me. That's so type A me. It's just me going, no, 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 no. Change it, fix it, make it better. Even though, like, back then, that was at the beginning, right? That was a long time ago, man. That was a
That
long
was
time
like
ago.
day one on clans. I was waiting till the thing launched, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna
Hmm.
get our clan in there and reserve our spot. That was great. But
All right, all right. What's next? What's next? What was the next one you said?
all right, next one was Lions. And what did you say? Did you say great or
I
something?
said incredible.
Oh, incredible. Yes, incredible.
I think because they're amazing. They're fantastic. I think they add a level of randomness. They add they can give you those like gasp moments in the Stone Age, which doesn't really exist, right? Otherwise, I think going back to the earlier question of is age a good spectating sport? I think just the existence of lions, right, as a player, extremely frustrating. But as a spectator, it adds this element of suspense, right? You see three lions clumped up in a corner next to a stone mine, just waiting, right? And then that unfortunate Vil roams just a little too far forward and just gets mauled to death. And then on top of that, to add to their incredibility, it's just the house trick has become this thing that I think it's an back to before. It's another part of that skill ceilings, part of that game knowledge and skill gap that just makes this game so entertaining. Which is why I think lions are really incredible, right? Maybe the randomness is a little much in a competitive game, but at the same time, it's like there are tools. You do have tools to deal with them. An aware player will never die to a double lion, but the fact that it can happen even to the best players, I think is what's so exciting. All right, that was lions. What?
Well, you know, the funny thing about Lions is for me, they're comedic relief when we're casting and I'm watching, oh, is this guy going to wander into this, den of lions? And I've seen as many as five in one game. Like,
Yeah,
it's like a herd of lions.
yeah.
And yet when I'm playing, it's the exact opposite. It's like if you're trying to send forward vills so you can paint somebody and you're like, the damn thing is on you,
Hmm.
it's messing up my garage or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So depending on your perspective, they're either incredibly funny to watch or incredibly annoying, but
Yeah.
incredible nonetheless.
Yes, 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 indeed.
Next was the Elo, and I think you said irrelevant
Eh,
or something to that effect.
Remarkably irrelevant. So my thoughts on that was very specific. I think it's irrelevant right now because the difficulty in using it. But even when we had a good ELO, I never thought it did a good job of accurately depicting players because I think a lot of people want ELO because it's a number that represents skill, right, at its core. But I think a lot of people forget that in our lobby system, ELO is actually fundamentally flawed, and that you pick in a way you always have control over to who you play. Right? Most people don't really think about that when we had ranked lobbies. People loaded a game and just play it, right? But you get individuals who only play against bad players or only play against worse players, or you get some people who just play every game they want, right? But then there's someone in the lobby who's going to say, right, as soon as you get one game where someone in the lobby says, "Oh, no, 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 these teams aren't fair. We got to do it this way," right? And it doesn't matter if it's better or worse. They're they're because there is no system that matches players together, and ultimately it's players matching against players as individuals and then as groups, right? That it undermines the value of ELO, which is why I said it's remarkably irrelevant because I still want ELO to be back in the game because at its core it is a bragging right, and when it's there, I feel like players play at a higher level. Right when we had ELO working, 1v1s became very fun and relevant because everyone tried very hard to play a lot of 1v1s and win them efficiently and quickly. And even when this new system came out, people tried it for a bit and it was fun again, but I think ultimately the cumbersome nature of it has been to its detriment, which is why I said it's remarkably.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately for the game right now, it's a missed
Hmm.
opportunity. People were so looking forward to Elo for the longest time, and I think unfortunately it kind of missed the mark in terms of how they implemented it here. But
Right.
it's one of those things that can be. extremely gratifying to the game, the community, if it's done well, or it could be just, it's like music. I mean, you listen to a good song, you're like, oh, this is perfect, and then you
Hmm.
listen to some god awful screeching thing, and it's just annoying as hell.
Hmm.
All right, next one, priests. And you
And I
said
said, I
over.
after a pause, I said overpowered, purely because I think their new healing mechanic with elephant archers is so powerful, and yeah, I think everyone here probably knows that I absolutely love elephant archers and priests. So Egyptian has just, even though their scythe got nerfed, and I thought the scythe nerf made Egypt irrelevant. I now think Egypt has really taken a good spot because their late game, as I say in quotes, death ball kind of reminds me of Sky Toss. If you're a StarCraft fan, it's when um a Protoss player can transition all of their pop space into, like, all 200 of their pop space into a sky army and roam the map, and nothing can ever fight it, nothing ever. So even if they lose all their base, they just run around doing this massive army, and it just reminds me of that death ball, right? And it's just so powerful, it's so fun, and priests are a core element of it because usually you counter elephants with priests, but if you have your own better priests backing it up, you just take them back, right? You just get them back, so it's like you never get converted, you never die, and oh man, priests are great. They heal. I've been trying to get better at using earlier priests to heal hurt units, and seeing what kind of value that adds to the army, because it's a weird in age 2, it's like oddly relevant to have monks out earlier because of the relics on the map. They add this extra value to the priest. You grab this item off the map. Well, it's like luring an elephant. You need to get this. It gives you a trickle of gold. So late game you have gold in a 1v1, where you can't trade. So it adds this element of, there's this item on the map that makes people make monks in the first place and get the building to do so early. And then because of that, a couple of them on the field, you're like, oh, might as well add a couple more because they have this power. And you convert a couple key units in a fight, and bam, it's a big swing in combat, right? If a priest converts a cav, right? If a priest converts one cav, right, in a fight in age 1, they've effectively paid for themselves total resource. If a priest get 2 conversions of a high gold cost unit, they've more than paid for themselves, because you have to think of the gold swing, right? Because it's not just the one unit that you're getting, you're taking away a unit. It's both a kill and a production, which is why the unit itself, you have to be very careful with priests because they can quickly become way too strong. But thankfully, they have very significant and commonplace counters in this game, so priests have some issues in Bronze Age, which is a shame because I think priests should have stronger counters in the Iron Age, not in the Bronze Age. Sorry, I don't know. There's a long tangent about priests, but oh man, I could, Rob, maybe this is a topic for another day. I could talk about priests. I could talk about
Yeah,
priests
yeah,
for 2 hours.
yeah, a lot of these things could be, expanded. It was funny because when you first said overpowered, I was wondering if we were still talking about the same game, but uh, you did a good job of um, expounding on all of the
Hmm.
strong attributes of them. I guess, after listening to you there, I would say that I think they're probably underappreciated, in my opinion, because you don't see them very often. I mean, they really can be very powerful in iron, um, but kind of a specialty play, I think, in bronze. If you're
Hmm.
behind walls and somebody's trying to get in with a big cab army, and you really want to, dissuade them from doing
Hmm.
that. But um, yeah, it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see if priests have their day, even though they got, and maybe some of the people that are listening or watch maybe don't realize, but they actually got buffed in that last update when the scouts sucked all the oxygen out of the room as being the big change, but priests were changed at that same time, given more hit points. They don't take damage, I think, from chariots, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the changes to priests were pretty straightforward. It was threefold. First, chariot archers no longer did double damage, right? I think that was a big aspect because our chariots already don't get converted. Like basic, they're like mace hoplites. You're just never gonna get a conversion, right? A hoplite would have to be sitting there attacking 3 layers of wall to get converted by a priest, right? A mace hoplite, right? And that was the fact with chariot archers, right? Like they just chariots don't get converted. It just takes way too long. Maybe you can get one, but the risk is, a chariot gets in range and 3 chariots send 2 volleys of arrows at your priest and the priest dies, right? Or even less than that, because it would be 8 damage a hit onto a priest, and you have 25 damage, right? So
That priest is dead before he hits the ground.
exactly. Wait, what? Yeah, right.
You,
I guess.
you know that old saying, he's dead before he hits the ground.
No, no, I have no idea what you're referring to, but we'll let that slide. We'll let
You
that.
shoot a guy in old western, and like he was dead before he hit the ground.
Oh, I
Looked a little
see. I
bit,
see. I see
I'm
now.
saying they take so much more damage than they actually have. Like,
Oh, right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like one arrow just is such overkill, which is why they're so weak right now. Is because chariot archers still do that still no, we took away the double damage, right? That was the big thing for chariots. And I think it's funny because it's made them a little more durable, but I mean they still can't convert that unit ultimately. So uh, it's very rare situations in which you can be using them at max range versus chariots, right? Because chariots have more speed, so they're just gonna, if they see the conversion start, they just run away or they target it down. And either way, you don't get a conversion, right? Somehow the chariot would have to be trapped, or the player would have to be a potato, right? And that's the only way you're ever going to get a chariot conversion. That being said, what was? Did you have something else on that? Because it was priests. We were talking about priests. We
no,
derailed a bit.
that was it. I think
So those were
that
your
was.
5, right?
So here's a point of order. So do you want to save the rapid fire in the other direction for the next call, or do you? Because if we go through it, it's probably going to chew up most of our remaining time.
Oh no, we're doing it. We're doing it. We still.
Okay.
Well, I think we said our minimum, right? I think we can go because all we have left are the scouts thing and then the quote, which is kind of an opening to that segment, but it's not very
All right.
not a very
Fire
dense
away.
one. Well, yeah, we could speed this up a bit. So I have 6, 6 for you. So
Okay.
I'll
Bonus round.
oh yeah, I'll
Bonus
write
round.
it. Well, because I had some that were relevant, and then there's a very flavorful number
Uh,
6. So 1 brand.
did, did I push the button? I said classic cup.
Okay, you said classic. Okay.
I didn't push my button.
You didn't put. I said brand, and then you just went silent. I was like, oh gosh. Okay.
I was like, okay, he's not responding, so
Okay.
that's what you get with pushing
Okay.
the button.
Okay. Classic. 1 brand. Classic cup. Okay. 2 is rushing.
Oh, painful.
3 is booming.
Love it.
Okay, I love it. We'll write that down. Okay. 4 is casting.
Casting fun.
Okay. 5 is palmy.
Grown.
Grown. I'll put that in asterisks. All right. And 6 is civilization 6.
Oh, lordy.
Is that the answer? Is that the answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna put that as my answer.
Okay.
Major disappointment. How's that? If you want word.
We can keep it all. Okay, that's funny. Oh, and Brainy Smurf saying he loves Civ 6. Well, Brainy, we'll get to that in just a minute. So, all right, so back to the beginning there. Brand Classic Cup. Why?
Well, because what popped in my head is I remember when we were talking about, launching the Classic Cup and everything. We had all those conversations about branding, which is important because
Hmm.
you want something to mean something. You want people to have, and this goes back to like NBA 101 stuff. Why was McDonald's so successful as kind of a new type of corporation, right?
Hmm.
Consistency and branding. I mean, if you wanted something to eat, restaurant ABC over here and John Doe's over there, you know what you're going to get. McDonald's, the branding was like, I know that restaurant and I know what I'm going to get. It's consistent, and so that's what it evoked when you said it. It just made me recall the conversations we had about
Hmm.
setting up Classic Up and why branding was such an important thing.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Branding, Classic Cup, the branding has been it's been an event for me because I've never had a brand before. I've never like worked on something like this before. So the I don't know. Yeah, branding. Cool. I like that you said classic cup. Gives me a little bit of happiness, you know. So two was rushing, and you said painful.
It,
I
it,
don't
it is.
think you need to elaborate on this one. I think we all, I think everyone listening knows exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah, well, and it could be from either side. I mean, there is nothing more fun and exciting than having a rush that just catches somebody like a quality player, somebody you know that's at your level or better, and you just hit them, and you're like, man, I just trashed that guy. That feels great. But if you happen to be that other guy, you're like, I had this great map. I was getting ready to do. Well, your next one was boom. I'm gonna go big. I'm the pocket guy. And what happens? Pogi shows up with 39, scouts at the 10-minute mark, and you're like, okay, next game.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but booming is oh no, yeah, rushing is very yeah, I just couldn't yeah. I mean yeah. So booming, you said love it. What makes you
Love
love
it.
it?
Well, because it gives you, if it's successful. So the first thing that popped in my mind was, okay, booming, like not like I attempted a boom and it failed, but you actually did a boom. You're like a pocket guy. You got two wing guys that are, either shielding you or keeping the opponents, busy so that you can get to a nice boom. You have so much flexibility, so many choices because you're flush um, with resources. You've got your income coming in terms of stone or gold and wood, whatever. It's all coming in. So it's like, okay, am I going to go massive chariots? Am I going to add some stone throwers into the mix? Are you going to do the Rainbow Army? Are you going to try to just go massive bronze combat fight? Are you going to try to get to iron? I mean, it's fun because it's not a set thing once you get there. You can react to how your partners are doing, the situational complexities that are going on in the game, and that's what I like about it. It just feels good when you have a lot of resources.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. It was fun. It's cool to see your opinion on rushing and booming because I think it's kind of like the two major aspects of Age One, right? It's like, do you rush or do you boom? And I think it's funny how you say painful and then love it. So you know you're inflicting pain because you're denying what you love
Yes, I guess that's true. It's
to your opponent. Yeah, yeah.
right.
So casting, you said fun for casting.
Casting is really fun. I, it's fun because you and I, we have a lot of conversations, and we love talking about strategy, tactics, and everything. And the casting gives us an opportunity, when we're doing it together, to be able to see a live game, to see some, really interesting gameplay, all the stuff that we talked about earlier that I don't want to repeat. You get to see it unfold, and you get to analyze it. You get to say, okay, from our perspective, why is this guy doing this, and where's this game going to evolve, and is this push that they're going to do, is it going to be successful, or we can see with the eye in the sky that he's going in with 15 CA. What he doesn't know on the other end is that there's two armies that are split that are going to flank him, that kind of thing. It's just yeah, it's neat to be able. It's almost as fun as playing the game.
Yeah, almost as fun as playing the game. I couldn't agree more. I think casting for me has evolved significantly into something like if you aren't familiar, I started casting because of Epid. Epid asked me to cast his tournament, Masters of Rome. He was like, "Hey, would you want to cast this?" It wasn't like a request; it was like an offer, right? He was like, "Hey, would you want to do this?" Um, because he knew that I streamed a bit. I hadn't streamed much. We were just chatting about it. I forget. I was just interested in it. I don't even remember how it happened. That's a question for Epid, right? 'Cause that's something I haven't even thought about is how did I get into this? How did I start doing this to get to this point? Right? And how did I get to the point that I'm at where I think it could grow? grow and be more and more, right? And I couldn't agree more. Fun, I think, is the core of casting, right? It has to be, right? Or at least me and you, right? Because we come back to it every weekend.
And got some exciting ones this weekend, but we'll save that for
Closing statements, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Stick to the schedule. No,
right.
the what are we saying? Oh, next was
Oh,
fall. Five was palmy, and you said in
Paul,
quotes, you just groaned. You didn't even say groan. You just groaned.
yes, yes. Palmy's
Mm.
not one of my favorite sieves, and I would say it's probably an even less favorite occurrence for my teammates when I get it. But
More
so
groaning.
Palmy, yeah, so Palmy can be a very powerful sieve, and in fact, Memo, every time I say I hate Palmy, Memo's like, I love Palmy. I wish I'd get Palmy more. And I'm like, well, I wish I could trade my sieve for you. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, my problem with Palmy is that if you get a poor food map, I mean, a poor wood map, they can kind of make up for it because they're more productive. They haul the stuff back faster, that kind of thing. But if you get poor food, man, you can be really tiny. So I find it's very map dependent more so than other sieves. The other problem I got with them is that if you get a decent map, you make it to bronze. They're actually fun to play in bronze because Palmy has a wide variety of choices for what you can do. Camels being the obvious one because those camels have little rocket boosters and they just go everywhere. So they're really fun to play when you get it.
Rocket boosters. I love the way you
Yeah,
phrase that.
those Palmy camels, they are the best.
Hmm.
But then I feel like when I get to iron, yeah, they get a lot of choices, but other than the heavy horse archer, it's like everything they get is kind of substandard. Everything is missing something
They
in
get
its
armored Ellie.
upgrade.
They get armored Ellie. With their eco and armored Ellie, they can have very high impact on iron, I would say.
Yeah, but usually you get the iron aids. That whole eco thing really doesn't matter because when you're iron, usually you don't go to iron unless you have a big eco. If you do, you kind of make a mistake, in my opinion. But if you get there and you got a big eco, the bonus of having even more eco, I don't know, you're just going to strip your resources that much faster. So anyway, that's my take on Palmy. But it's the early game is the reason I groaned is because it's like, okay, I gotta hope I got gazelle, I got shorefish, I got elephant, I got something to keep those bills busy with in order to keep building bills.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're certainly a tricky sieve, and I personally, I know your reluctance to get palmy, your hesitation when you load into a map and you see it, and I can hear it in your voice. You just want to quit. You want you want to pilot maneuver it.
I want to go back. I
Yeah,
want to go back.
you want to go back. You see it, you just call it. You say 23, and then you start over. But that being said, your final one was Civ 6, to which Brainy Smurf in chat said he loves Civ 6, and you said, "Oh lordy," in quotes, and then major disappointment, also in quotes.
Yeah, so I've been playing Civ since the very first Civ came out. Civ 1 was fabulous, groundbreaking. By the way, I don't know. I had read an article a while ago about one or more of the developers on Civ were also involved in developing Age of Empires,
Hmm.
which is why there are so many parallels. In fact, one of the developers in that article had said that one of the early concepts was, hey, this should be the real time version of
Mm-hmm.
Civilization, right?
Yeah.
So if you've never played Civ, uh, you ought to try it because it's a fabulous game. And there are a lot of parallels that you'll see. Civ 1 was great. Civ 2 was great. It was like A New Hope followed on by Empire Strikes Back. It was like the follow on was even better than the first one. Civ 3 debacle. Civ 4 fantastic. Civ 5 groundbreaking, new, different. Civ 6 I was like it felt like 3 all over again. One I couldn't. As you know, Winston, because we've talked about this, I can't stand the graphics in it. I felt like the graphics in Civ 5 were really tremendous. And then in Civ 6, I was like, yeah, I don't know, can't handle that. And I appreciate the innovativeness that they tried to put into Civ 6 by adding the whole districts concept. Um, They revamped how religious wars happen. Like you can have religious wars sort of independent of the other stuff, and so on. I don't know. It just, I guess I've expected so much out of the Civilization collection of games that the bar was set so high for me. Um, and that's why I felt it was missed opportunity. I still play Civ 5. So, I mean, I'm glad that, um, Brainy likes, Civ 6. You like Civ 6. There's a Civ for everybody if you like this type of games. For me, the best one was 5.
Mm. Well, that is a fantastic answer. That wraps up our a segment, the quick fire segment, which ended up that went on. I will admit that went on longer than I thought it would. That took us about 25 minutes to go through, but I mean that's fine. I mean it showed us the
Well,
power of
I
the
think
quick
it
fire
draws
segment.
out some of your feelings, biases, philosophies about the game, because it just pulls straight from what you think on some of these interesting topics.
Yeah, it does. It does. And now I think we can get. I think it's been yeah we're an hour in, and I think it's time to get to our big topic. Right. This is I think if you're tuning into the podcast for the first time right now, I think each episode we have a plan to talk about something age one related in depth and try to get to the nitty gritty of it. If you're watching live, I recommend your comments. This is where we'd love to read what you say. If you're watching on YouTube or on a recorded version, feel free to leave a comment and respond to that because this is where this is interesting. The new world order, are scouts too strong? This is where I think we're going to have a rich diversity of opinions. I've been speaking with a bunch of people around the community recently. I mean, notably, I guess I would say Morik, just in terms of recency bias. I spoke with him yesterday, and he thinks scouts, or 2 days ago, a couple days ago, in the past few days, Morik said that scouts are just far too strong in the current form, right? And I don't know if I I don't know. I don't know, like a scout rush, the way it interacts with the map, like in a one-on-one, I think they're fantastic, right? Because it's a way of getting map control and power and having it and using it, which I think is really great. But then I think in team games, I see the error, the flaw. Right, the flaw is that in a team game, you can just it's like free pickings. If you have scouts out before anyone else's tool, it's just run around the map, kill everything, get you just have a free range of the map, and it can maybe get too much value for a unit, right? You can maybe kill too many vills. I don't know. What are your initial thoughts on scouts?
Well, I'm a big fan of the change to scouts because I think it really changed the early game calculus. And it set up a different path if you want to go on the offense. And it gave you one more thing to worry about if you are defensive. So I really like him, despite the fact that when you said rushing, I said painful because it is. If you are not prepared for a scout rush, it's binary. I mean, if you're not walled up or almost walled up, and like a pack of scouts gets in, if you get four scouts come in, you're not Sumi or Sumerian or whatever, they'll just devastate, and you cannot get away. Somebody that knows how to micro them, they're going to just devastate your economy. It's sort of binary. I mean, I've seen good players like, okay, well, it's 10:30 and I'm dead, right? Um, so there is that aspect to it, but the reason I don't think they're overpowered is because, um, if you want to defend against a scout rush, it's really not that hard in most maps. Some maps, I mean, if you're out in the wide open in the terrain, and it obviously makes it a lot more difficult. But even houses are enough to stop scouts. It takes them too long to get through them, and one bowman on the inside of even a flimsy wall, is enough to deter scouts unless there's just like tons of them. They're fairly expensive unless you're Yamato. Um, so I think it's a balanced approach. I think what Morik's hitting on is something that I also feel, and I don't want to go too far into this topic, but Um, if villagers had a little more hits, like if you happen to be Sumer and you're defending against a scout rush, it is radically different than if you're any other Sith. And I think we've seen that play out in uh, in the recent
Duel in the desert.
Oasis,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
Duel in the Desert.
yeah, I mean that's so right because with that extra HP, it's like the combat between Vils and the unit that's attacking is really strong. So, do you think that scouts are the best manifestation of a better manifestation of the axe rush? So much so that when those scouts get in, it's even worse than a couple axes getting in, or I mean, because on paper, scouts don't really have that much more power than axers, and in theory, they actually have less.
Well, I think, yeah, but here's what scouts have that Axers don't. They have massive sight. So like you can, if a player is trying to multitask, managing a lot of different Axers and his eco and everything, I
Hmm.
mean, you can lose an Axer, right? If you have a group of them and you can peel off a guy and he chases that and the other guys. So there's ways to evade an Axers. Yeah, you're going to
Hmm.
take some damage, but you can potentially survive. But the sight visit the sight the increased visibility of the scouts with the speed, right, of the scout, and the fact that you simply cannot take a scout down with bills unless you got a lot of bills. Because if you start attacking the scout, the guy just runs it away, just kites him a little bit, backs him off. The scout takes a lot of hits. It is so much more devastating to me. Axers still have their role because Axers they're the quit hit option in a rush. You build your clubbers, you get 4 or 5 clubbers ready. The minute you hit tool, you send those suckers in with the upgrades clicked, and by the time they actually engage, so you're in there a lot faster. But
Yeah,
scouts are devastating.
I think the reason that I think a big part of this is when you look at how scouts function in our team games, right? Like Axe Rush, yes. If you want to quick hit one player, I think axes are probably still the best bet, right? Because they get in, they get the armor, and they have that extra 2 damage that scouts don't have, and they can outpace Vils. They have point 0.1 more move speed, so they can keep up with Vils. Vils can spread out, and the Axers have trouble keeping up with all of them. So there are counters to the Axe Rush, but ultimately, Axers, because there is no, I mean, like I guess Mass Slingers are a great counter, but Mass Slingers counter everything. So when we talk about scouts, I think I'm specifically looking at this from the lens of a team game where, yes, axers are in quotes a quicker hit, but but if you tried to rush 2 people with a unit and you have to pick one unit, I'm always gonna pick scouts in the current meta, in the current patch, with them only costing 80 food, with the speed that they have, with the updated attack features, right? With how they how they'll keep microing and how they fight back better, like all of that aspect, all of those aspects combined have just made, if I want to have the biggest presence on the map as a team player on a flank position in our expert team games, I say, okay, I could go Axers and kill maybe a few Vils on one guy. By the time my unit makes it across the map into it makes it across the map into another guy, right? What are we talking? Like, what, 14 minutes, 15 minutes, the guy's bronze, the axers die, it's over, right? Scouts, they can be 3 players in. You could go bing bing bong, and the third player that you hit, they're still not even tool age, right? If they're a deep pocket thinking that they're gonna bronze, right? So they're going 26, 27 Vils, and maybe they made a little mistake on their house wall, they chop through a tree, and bam, it's over for them, right? And that's one player getting so much value out of that unit, which is why I think in our team games we're seeing it every game, right? Which is why I think Morik might be having an inverse reaction to it, similar to how we had inverse reactions to Slingers, and we still do, right? I mean, at the end of the day, in tool extended tool age wars, like the Slingers just by far the best unit, right? As soon as you have 10 slingers, scouts are irrelevant, right? But it's just the fact that you can move around the slingers with the scouts that makes them so valuable. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this topic and why is it truly a new world order or is it a fad? Is it the fact that these scouts are so powerful and I don't know, like because these it's so hard to place their power level because they lose to every other unit in one-on-one combat. Well, I guess other than slingers, right? But like as soon as you have 12 of any tool unit, scouts become by far the worst, right? You could not even lose a single bowman when you fight scouts, right? If you have 12 on 12, you wouldn't even lose one. Axers, you might lose a single axer, right? If the scout player has to take a fight, right? And slingers, maybe you kill a couple slingers. I mean, with 12 on 12 with slingers, the slingers might get pretty wrecked, but slingers also cost less. So in a cost efficient manner, is the scout player really winning there? Winning 12 and losing maybe if you have a hill or something, any sort of land feature to block movement, because that's the big power level of the scout, right? Is the movement. So as soon as you have a way to inhibit the movement, you directly inhibit the power of the unit. So that's why the scouts I think are strong, but too strong, I don't know, which is why I think it's a great question. I would love man, I just don't know. I don't know. Like cuz they used to cost 100 food and no one ever made them, right? And they didn't have a good attack animation. You had to micro them like villagers really in combat. But now that they're so intensely easy to mass. I would say I don't want to say easy to mass because they're still very expensive. Because if you're doing this, if you make more than like 6 scouts, I mean you're basically saying I'm never gonna bronze, right? Like your bronze is gonna come by the time you're able to bronze. Unless your teammates are directly protecting you, someone's just gonna send like 5 CA to your wood line and you're dead, right? Like it's just a matter of time, or a cavalry charge is gonna just take out some of your eco, right? Like it's literally just a matter of time before you die if you make too many scouts. It's such a big investment, but I think even with it being such a big investment, I think its payout is so substantial that we're seeing so many players still value this investment. And I think maybe that's where players are saying, could it be too strong? Because even if it, like, at the end of the day, you could be spending everything on this, but, if at its core it's worth it, then does it matter how much it costs? If you win the game because of the cost, isn't it just worth it at the end?
Yeah, on balance, I like them. I think it keeps the perennial boomers, because you have to make sure that you can wall up, because somebody's going to scout you if you don't, and I like that. So I've been a fan of that change, despite how many times I've been wrecked by it as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is one other side benefit, since you specifically talked about in team games. If somebody on your team is going to scout rush and they're good at scout rushing, which means they go on, they hit somebody really hard, and then they move on, try to do some damage to another opponent. They map out so much of the fog of
Oh,
war
that's
for
so
the two
true.
for the two remaining or three remaining people on your team, that when your pocket guy or your other bronze guys have army, they know exactly where to go at that point because the guy has mapped out everything for you.
Imagine that. Scouts act. We had to buff scouts so much that they're a powerful tool unit. They're finally being used to scout as well, but inadvertently maybe because the player that's doing it. I mean, rarely do I ever send my scouts around the map just to scout. I'm always sending those scouts out to kill vills, right? But it has this inverse side effect where they have the highest vision in the game, so they're gonna be very efficient at finding those
Yeah,
spots,
and
finding those
and
vills.
with the shared vision that everybody plays with in the game,
Hmm.
it benefits your teammates enormously.
Yeah, man. Indeed, indeed. Well, I think we may have exhausted that idea. I think
I think we're minus 14 minutes to our
right, right, right,
9 o'clock
right, 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 right.
deadline.
Okay, okay, okay. We can cap that off. I think the scout discussion. I hope this sparks more discussion in the community about the current power level of scouts. Is it enough? Is it too much? I think there's a lot of opinions there, and I really want to get people's feedback on that. So if you have one, please let us know. In whatever way you think is best, Discord and the Classic Up Discord or whatever. Um, that being said, I think we can go into our final segment here, or yeah, the final real thing here, which is the quoting strategically, um, which is it's going to be the segment. So every episode of this podcast, we're going to go into a historical quote regarding strategy and see how we can apply it to Age of Empires. So this week it's pretty straightforward because we're just going to kind of get it going. I just brought it up on screen. So this is Sun Tzu's Chapter One, quote one, I guess, or part one. Part one, number one, I guess is the best way to phrase it. Which is just laying plans is the chapter title, and Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state," and I think this is important to look at when we talk about how quotes and how a podcast such as this has value, because we're looking at thinking strategically, which is essentially what the art of war in quotes is. Art of war is the idea that when you look at combat from like a bird's eye view and you think about it and you think strategically and you think tactically and you try to apply all the knowledge that you can to a situation, you're going to be better off than someone who's focusing just on one aspect of combat, like strength or numbers or power or placement, right? If you combine all of these things, that is in essence the art of war. It's being good at strategy, right? And being good at strategy, being of vital importance, can relate to Age of Empires as, right, like we as players and as viewers, we like a game like this because there is a plethora of strategies available to you at any minute, really, right? You have so many options in this game, and rarely do we take action on all of them, or if honestly any of them, right? So we're going to look at, in this segment, quoting strategically, we're going to be looking at quotes from history and we're going to be applying them to age in the best way we possibly can. And I'm excited for this because I think this has a lot of potential, right? I already have quite a few quotes up lined up in mind. We're going to be going deeply into the art of war, which is Sun Tzu's famous book on strategy and deception. It's focused a lot on information, which is something that I don't think is really talked a lot about in Age of Empires strategy, right? A lot of people focus on basic things like Bronze Age or how to bronze test or the tool rush. What's the best way to tool, right? But there are so many smaller nuances which Age of Empires certainly hits upon, but don't always seem to be the focal point from the direct viewpoint of the player. So we're going to certainly be going into this, and I mean, Bromley, what are you thinking about that?
Yeah, well, we touched on some of this earlier when we talked about the difference between tactics and strategies. Um,
Right.
but to me, it kind of um, evokes some of those thoughts, right?
Hmm.
And again, and it also relates to why the game's so interesting because it's not just the person that clicks the fastest that's going to win. Um, it's not necessarily the one that wins particular battles, but it has to be overlaid with a strategy. You have to have you're making thoughtful, intelligent decisions on how best to use what you have in terms of eco and resources in the context of what your opponent has. What kind of civ is he? Where is he located? Um, what kind of advantages do they have? How are they playing? What's their play style? Those aspects that come into play as well. And
Right.
that's what the true experts, whether they do it knowingly or not, um, it's what they do.
Right. And then the study of that would lead to, in quotes, like an art of war, right, for age, right? And I think that's a great thing for us to kind of pursue here, and it's certainly a lofty goal. I'm not saying that we have the answers here. I'm saying that in this podcast, in our discussions in the future, we can certainly touch on a lot of very relevant things, and hopefully discover with both ourselves and with you guys, the viewers, and or I guess listeners in this case, um, and see what we can glean from these important quotes and apply it, and trying to apply it, because I think any study is never wasted. I think is a great way to just open that up and just say, like, if we can look at anything, any aspect of Age of Empires and just dive into it analytically, there's almost always going to be something you can learn from that. And I hopefully this segment can transition beyond this little intro into something over the course of the series, into something very meaningful for listeners. And so I hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I think we're ready to just about close out this episode. I think um I just want to thank everybody at this point for listening to this point of the episode. Um, just to let you guys know, we are talking. Today is the 17th of October, so this weekend, the 19th and 20th, we do have two show matches coming up. We have both at 15 GMT, so 15 GMT on Saturday, the 19th of October, and 15 GMT on Sunday, the 20th of October. We are having show matches. I think they're going to be great. They're going to be good fun. We'll have the co-casting with Rom Wiffle here. They'll be casting in Portuguese on Joa Kret's channel, and I believe Thontic is casting both of these as well for the Vietnamese community. So I think these are great things to look out for this upcoming weekend if you're curious about what's going on. And I don't know, Rom, you have any other closing thoughts on this podcast?
Um, just that, if any people listening here has some, thoughts or topics that they think might be of interest to discuss in future ones, just put them in the, put them in the comments or send them to either me or Winston, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll, because I mean, Winston and I we chat all the time anyway. We hope this is of interest or value to people. But if there are topics that you guys come up with, you might come up with things that we hadn't thought of that would be compelling to discuss, debate, investigate, over the course of these calls.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like we will be looking at comments here and scouring through them to try to find what is of good value. And also, there's another quick thing here. We are considering bringing on guests for short periods onto individual episodes. So uh, if you're curious about what someone thinks about something, feel free to leave a comment regarding who you'd want to hear from outside of Ramwi and I, and what and why you want us to bring them onto the show, and why you would want them, or what questions you'd want to ask them, right? And if you have a compelling question, we'll certainly try to get people out. We'll certainly try to get people onto the show and talk about stuff. So, that being said, guys, I think that just about wraps up this episode. Yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and have a good one. Bye bye now.
Have a good rest of your day, guys.
Bye.